Welcome. Hello, everyone. Welcome. And thanks for joining in. All right. So, welcome again, everyone, to this session. I am Success Oyeshola, and I'm your host for today. We're having another session of the Inspiration Week today, and we're excited to be back here. If you were here yesterday and you're back here today, you are the real MVPs. So, today we're having another exciting session, and we have an amazing speaker. She's Daniela Andrade. She's an Harvard College graduate and a Fulbright scholar completing a master's in media studies at the University of Amsterdam. At Harvard, she led Harvard Women in Entrepreneurship, earning several awards. She built female founder ecosystems through startup growth work, also newsletter and LinkedIn storytelling. So at this moment, I'm going to be handing over to Daniela to take us on this amazing session this evening. Over to you, Daniela.
Thank you so much for the warm welcome. I'm really happy to be here and give back to the Teens and AI community. Just for some context, I actually interned with Teens and AI about 4 years ago now, a little over 4 years ago. So the Teens and AI roots are very deep. So I'm happy to be here now as a speaker. So just a little bit about me and just building upon what success outlined. My name is Daniela. I'm originally from New York. I attended Harvard University and actually graduated from Harvard in an undergraduate degree in neuroscience and philosophy this past May. And I'm completing my master's in media studies at the of Amsterdam on a Fulbright fellowship. And here today, I really wanted to take this time to really talk about the future of distribution in the age of AI. And so I think something really helpful will be using my story as a case study to kind of walk through what does distribution mean? What does it mean like in the age of AI? And how can we use storytelling as a new tool? And so I'm sure many of you guys have learned and have at least experimented with different tools like Lovable and Replit, which are code generator tools and app building tools that can actually build working web apps and websites and products. And a lot of times now, what is this new world where absolutely anyone, me, you, your grandmother, can use natural language words to become apps. And in this world where everyone can be an engineer and anyone can build anything, the future lies in how can you deceive the signal from the noise? How can you understand where to actually put your attention to? Because in the world with TikTok and social media, attention is so important. And if everyone is building products, how can you make sure that your product and what you're building can actually have an impact on real people's lives? And so a lot of that stems down to distribution. And distribution is just a term that describes how do you get access to users and people. So that means that could mean how many videos you get on a TikTok video, or how many likes you get on a LinkedIn post, how many people download your product and use it every week. Those are all examples of distribution and how you can have people actually put their attention to what you're building. Because I think we can all agree that it would be pretty boring if you only built an app for yourself, right? We want to share our creations with the world. And I think the rule book around distribution and how you get attention for what you're building has really evolved in the name of AI and with AI tools, because now you could use AI to write LinkedIn posts and AI to make images and videos. And so something that's worked tremendously for me in my own pursuit of building community, building an audience, being able to really spread my message was really being able to storytell. And I know that you guys have probably used a lot of different AI tools, but I think in the advancement of AI, we're actually seeing alongside the advancement of soft skills, right? A lot of people are talking about emotional AI and AI that really understands emotions and human behavior. And who better to understand human behavior and to communicate with other humans than humans like you and I? And so a lot of the amazing work that I've been able to do is through storytelling on LinkedIn. And so specifically, just to give some context on my background, when I was a student at Harvard University, I was really interested in entrepreneurship and being able to build products that can actually help people's lives, specifically in women's health. and I enrolled in Harvard's first ever course on entrepreneurship. And when I was in the course, I was one of two women out of 25 men. And so, in a class full of men who were building different products, it was kind of anxiety inducing being around other guys who didn't really understand women's health projects. And so that's when I realized that at Harvard, we didn't have a community for female student entrepreneurs to build products and to build community and meet other girls who were interested in coding, growth, marketing. And so that's when I took upon myself to really help launch this community at Harvard and beyond Harvard, including other schools in the Boston area to help other women, find community as they build their companies, as they look for users, as they just look for support. And in doing so, because the power of social media is so big, as I was, building this community, which means hosting events, hosting pitch competitions, getting sponsors to sponsor our events, to give us money, to give us free grant money to these female entrepreneurs to build and invest in their projects. I was documenting every single step of the way on LinkedIn. I would constantly post, this is what I've learned. We hosted this pitch competition. These are three students you need to look out for. Um, you know, uh, these are people who came to Harvard to speak. And by building this community online, I was really able to amplify my impact and my voice, and being able to actually, in turn, attract these opportunities back at me. And so that specifically means being able to, get other speakers interested in coming to Harvard to speak because they saw my LinkedIn post, getting other women to come to our events and find this community that they previously didn't have because they were active on LinkedIn. And so I think just using my story as a case study, 2 years later, I've been able to grow my LinkedIn community to almost over 50,000 followers, being able to expand my reach and my mission and my story to people all around the world. I live in Amsterdam today, but a lot of my community still is in the United States. I have people in Europe, I have people in Asia reaching out to me, and being able to really have a mission and being able to communicate that online has been one of the biggest defining differentiators of our generation and being digitally native. That we can pick up our phone right now and film a TikTok, and a million people can see it, that anyone can go viral no matter where you are from, or as long as you have a phone and an internet connection, you have that equal access to opportunity to really tell your story and communicate that. And so I think what I wanted to have the main takeaway from this talk is really understanding how to build your, social media, how to really focus on telling that story, and how to really make sure you identify your users. Because as you all know, we all have different algorithms on different apps. And so when you post something, the algorithm drives that post to people who might engage with it because they're already interested in that topic. And so I think definitely considering how much, like, energy and what your mission is to build something. Also consider on the other hand of it, on the other side of it, of like, who is the audience here? If I'm building a women's health app for women in college, my audience is women in college, and making sure you really understand your audience and your users, because that's all messaging is about, right? Because I think social media is just a really complex term to describe storytelling, that we all grew up reading and listening to stories, watching movies that, told out stories, and being able to communicate a story with your product and how it will help people's lives is ultimately what changes you from being able to just, have a small audience and small user base to actually growing your user base. And ultimately, I get a lot of questions around how do I start? I'm scared to post online. And the way that I found it is that, like anything in life, you have to start and you will be bad. A lot of my first LinkedIn posts online were terrible when I started posting 2 years ago, but you will not get better unless you start practicing. And the tools we have access to today are incredibly useful, that you can use to edit your content, to be able to understand, script writing, post writing, editing your videos, And I think ultimately understanding that fundamentally there's no better time today than today to use these tools, to test them out, to fail, to try again, and to be able to build something from it. Because the downside is, you might not know how to use a new tool right away. But the upside is you learn the new tool and you can get access to a huge community of people that want to support your mission and support your product and use your product. And so ultimately, I think my main takeaway is that if I could tell myself, um, at the beginning of college would definitely be to continue testing new tools, to continue practicing and to not get discouraged, and to continue posting online and documenting your experiences and your learning journey of like what you're learning in different programs like Teens and AI, different communities you're a part of, and ultimately making sure that what you're building is reflected as a community's journey that's bigger than yourself. Because I think anchoring your content in, what's bigger than you has ultimately helped me by anchoring it back to specifically my community, which was the women, female student entrepreneurship community. And so ultimately recognizing that understanding your community is ultimately understanding how you can serve them and write content for them and build products for them that will actually impact people's lives. Because I definitely think my defining word of my life is impact, and by being able to have impact and measure it through numeric um, quantities like likes, downloads, people that use your product is ultimately how you can measure your mark on the world. And by doing so is really by putting yourself out there. So ultimately I'm super excited to see what people in your generation are going to build and are going to share with the world, because I definitely think there is no better time to build, to test things, and to try things out and fail. And so that's just a little bit of background around my story and advice to you all on how you can build your distribution engine through different social media platforms. And I'd be open to taking on any specific questions people have.
Thank you very much, Daniela. That was pretty insightful. Thank you so much. I would start off with a couple of questions that I have here with me. If you have other questions, you can drop them also in the question and answer chat. The first question here is you spoke about platforms shaping visibility. How would should we think about choosing where to publish our stories? What should influence that decision?
It's a great question, and I think it reflects back to what I was saying about where is your audience? For example, are you targeting senior citizens, like older people? Older people probably aren't on Instagram or TikTok. Or are you targeting Gen Z people, where people who are Gen Z, like myself, are going to be more likely on TikTok? So understanding where your audience is. For example, if my audience are people in college and business professionals. So LinkedIn is a great platform for that. And so understanding where your audience already lives is really important. And so I think that first starts with like, what's your goal? And then once you understand your goal, then understanding the next step is where's my audience and where do they live? And once you understand where your audience is, then you can start focusing time on documenting your journey and posting onto that platform.
Thank you very much for that. That was very useful. The next question here says that what was the turning point of your LinkedIn journey and what thing do you think what accelerated your growth?
That's another great question. So I think what really turned my LinkedIn journey was actually this summer. I just wrote a post in 10 minutes, like a very quick post on LinkedIn about my experience living in the Netherlands, where I live today, compared to New York, where I'm from in the United States. And it went super viral. It got over 1 million people saw my post, almost 2 million people, and that really helped me get a lot of visibility. And that was very random. Like I didn't spend hours writing the post. It was literally 10 minutes and it just went super viral. And so that kind of is how these platforms work. Like there's no secret recipe to how to go viral, because if there was, everybody would be going viral, which is not the case that we're seeing. And I think the turning point was recognizing like listening to your audience. And a lot of that will take studying what goes well. Like for me, that was, oh, this post went super viral. People really liked my opinions on living in Europe compared to the US. So I continued writing more posts on LinkedIn about my experience in Europe versus the US. And so I think your audience will tell you what they want you to post about. And so a lot of my posts that do super well today are related to giving internship opportunities to students. And I list out opportunities for students. Those do really well. So really listening to your audience by looking at the data, looking at the numbers of like what actually is getting a lot of likes and views and letting that inform your and for you to
Thank you
double
so
down
much.
on
There are
your
two questions here
strategy.
that are son says that thank you so much. All right, so this one says that attention is a scarce resource. So what signals tell you that your story is actually cutting through? I have over 1 million views already. Does that mean I've succeeded? Are the other metrics I am to look out for?
Yeah, so that's awesome that you already have like 1 million views. I think thinking about your story is really like kind of going back to what I was saying of like what resonates with your audience. And I think it's really what your measure of success is. Like what do you want from your audience? Do you just want to sustain a community? Do you want to get this community to download your app or go to your website and help what I think it goes back to like what are your goals? Are you building a project? Are you looking for new users? And really m- making sure that goal is clear and how you guide your community is super important. For example, I created a newsletter and I would post about my newsletter a lot because I wanted my community to subscribe to my newsletter. So that's just an example of aligning your community and your goals around your community as well. So vice versa.
Thank you very much. All right, so the next question says you touched on AI tools in storytelling. So where do they generally help and where should creators be cautious?
That's another great question. So I think they're very helpful with writing hooks. I think most of you are probably familiar with the concept of a hook, like the first four words of a video or a post. Those basically determine whether people will keep scrolling or will they actually stop and pay attention to your video. And we can see that the drop off rate, most people stop paying attention after like the first four words. And so I think ChatGPT and Claude are really good in helping you test out hooks because your hook is really the most important part of your post and making sure that hook is really captivating and stops people from scrolling. So it can be really helpful in writing alternatives. I think something to be careful is making sure that you don't lose your voice by using AI tools. Like a lot of people have complained that like all the videos and the scripts and people sound the same because they're all using AI and it's called like AI slop. But making sure that you don't lose your own voice and understanding your own writing style and communicating that is super important as well when you're using these tools. So being mindful of that.
Thank you so much. Now, this person is very concerned about applying the information that they've gotten into their Techathon. And then their question is if I want to promote my Techathon project story this week, what would be the first three things or steps you recommend that I pay attention to?
Yeah, that's great. I think like a first very quick, easy thing to post about is like why do you build it? I think the why the is the most incredible part of a story. Like why are you building this product? Is why is it important to you? And kind of explaining that to the world is a really good first step. So I think just writing it down is a super good first step. I also think being like shorter is better. I know for I'm only speaking with regard to LinkedIn, but for TikTok it can be different. But I do think that condensing your thoughts, make sure that you're not providing too much information is really important and making sure that if it's for LinkedIn, that it's clear and it's not too long. If it's TikTok, you're focusing on your hook and you might have cool effects in your video. And so I think it's also understanding like what platforms, right? And understanding how you want to communicate to your audience through that platform.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Okay, so this last question here says that how do you make your videos visible to many people? I know you touched on this slightly, so maybe this person just needs you to expatiate on it.
Yeah, no worries. So I've used TikTok, but it's not my like top platform of choice. But I think the way TikTok works is that there's an algorithm, and when you post something, the TikTok algorithm pushes out to people who are already interested in content that's similar to that. So the TikTok algorithm, which it's not open source, so we can't identify how to, understand how it works, but I think that's just one ally to help push out your content. But I do think another underrated way to get your content out there is by working with micro influencers or micro content creators who have smaller followings, but their audience is very similar to the people you want to have access to. So whether they can repost your post or whether they can push out a video promoting your product, whether for free, because they're really interested in your mission, is another way that you can get help by kind of borrowing someone else's audience by them promoting your work.
Mm, thank you so much. Now, this person is asking that what are some of the best entrepreneurship lessons that you learned from being at Advert and starting your initiative?
Yeah, so I think the number one thing is your team is so important. Like, you cannot do entrepreneurship alone. You definitely need to find a team of people that are actually as equally passionate, driven, and aligned on the mission. And finding the right people to work with is actually much harder than people think. And a lot of times they might not be your friends, your existing friends. They might need to be people who you've met at work or you met through a project or on social media. And so I think understanding like finding your team is so important and to not underestimate how difficult that is and don't rush into things and to follow your gut and intuition that if this relationship isn't really working right, then you should really kind of understand that even though you want it to work, it might not work and not to force anything. I think the second lesson is your first idea will be bad and you constantly have to try things and iterate and to not plan. Like I think people get in the analysis paralysis of like I'm going to write a document listing all the things I'm doing and like they plan things instead of do things. And so that leads me to my third lesson, which is like measuring impact. Like it might sound like a good idea in your head, but like actually try building and testing something, which is much easier today than it was even 3 years ago with applications like Lovable and Replit, where you can literally build a product in like an hour, 2 hours. And so actually like test things with real people and making sure that like it's outside of your head to leave, your brain and actually test things with people to, run experiments, see do people actually like this before you spend a lot of time and energy planning things that might not work.
Thank you so much. So we have two more questions before we wrap this up. This person says it's not easy to get in contact with other creators. Is there any idea or ways to get up, especially regarding collaborations and leveraging on their audience?
Yeah, that's a great question. So there are definitely a lot of different startups that have services that match people with creators. And so I think a lot of it is going to be like another thing I guess I forgot to mention in my last lesson is like you will get a lot of no's. Like even your friends, like they might not want to try things. And so the only way you get to a yes is if you keep trying. And so whether that means like reaching out to creators directly via direct message or emailing them. A lot of creators have their emails in their bios on TikTok or Instagram. I think also there's different websites, like you can ask ChatGPT, like what are websites that can get me in contact with creators? It'll probably list you some, so testing out different websites. But I definitely think like don't let the no's discourage you. Like creators get tons of different people asking to partner and collaborate. And so you'll definitely have to find the right one by a lot of like just trying and putting yourself out there and reaching out to a lot of people.
Okay, so the final question for today is: would you say that a part of the key motivation to be an entrepreneur was shaped by the atmosphere in the university you're studying at?
Yeah, that's a great question. So I think Harvard now, since I've left, has become much more entrepreneurial. But when I was first at Harvard, like being an entrepreneur and like doing entrepreneurship classes wasn't cool at all. Like I think my university, they had programming to support it, but a lot of it was driven by my own interests to have direct, immediate impact on people's lives, experimenting. I also didn't see myself in corporate. And so I definitely think if you're even considering, a startup or a career in startups, definitely just like start interning at one, just because you never know until you actually try working at one. It's a very different experience in like corporate traditional working environments. So yeah, ultimately my school didn't affect me, but now since I've left, there's actually much more programming and much more of a culture around it.
Thank you so much, Daniela. This was quite insightful. Thank you so much. And then this is the end of today's session. I'd like to say a big thank you to everyone that participated. I saw the many engagements, the many questions, and thank you so much, Daniela, for answering all the questions with such insight. I would say a big thank you to everyone. This is where we're going to be wrapping up for today. Inspiration Week continues tomorrow. Please ensure that all your questions regarding the Techathon, kindly send that via email to the Teens in AI email address, and then we'll be there to support you. And also, tomorrow's session is happening at 4 p.m. GMT. Ensure that you join in at 4 p.m. We're having an exciting session tomorrow. You get the communications even before the session starts tomorrow. I'm looking forward to seeing everyone here. Stay curious, stay inspired, and then see you soon. Have a lovely day, everyone.